What's up guys, today I want to share with you part 2 of the star chart video. In this video I go over how to mod your weapons, I explain the modding system a bit, I explain how certain stats work. This is meant for new players on helping them deal with the star chart enemies and higher levels. This is not a guide on how to do the most damage for endgame content, it's to introduce you into how to mod your weapons, so hopefully you know how to mod your weapons for the future. If you're looking for a guide on how to mod your weapons do the most damage, I will be making one of those shortly, but this is not it. This is just to help you understand the system a little bit more and then ease you into doing the most possible you can with the modding system for your weapon. Keep in mind this is just for weapons, not for warframes. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments or come by the stream. I stream 3 days a week on Twitch, and if you guys enjoy the video, leave a subscribe, comments, like, all that stuff. Let me know what you think. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy and hopefully helps you do more damage. Speaking about damage, so one way to increase your damage is by modding your weapons. So for demonstration purposes, I have a Baza that's level 30 max rank, and we go to upgrade. I have an Orican Catalyst, which normally if you were to max out a weapon, you'll have capacity 30, right? If you go to actions, you'll see Working Catalyst right here. If you put one in, it will double your capacity from 30 to 60. So right now we have one installed, so we're at 60 capacity. So as you can see, we have some stats. Fire rate, self-explanatory. The higher this number, the faster it shoots. Magazine shows you the reload time, magazine maximum, and how much you get from pickups. And this number right here is 40, tells you how big your magazine is. So again, the bigger this is, the bigger your magazine, and if it's the smaller this is, the smaller your magazine. Accuracy, this doesn't matter, but very high accuracy means the bullets go where you aim. If I were to put, for example, this goes down, so keep that in mind. Trigger, automatic, it will say held for like bows, or semi for semi-auto, and so on. Noise, this gun is silence, so if you were to shoot it, enemies that don't know you're there won't get alarmed. Riven disposition, I wouldn't worry about just yet, but there are some mods called Rivens that are for specific weapons, and the higher this is, the stronger those mods are for specific weapons. Okay. After that we have fall off. So after in these ranges, that's when your bullets start doing less damage, but this is usual in like normal FPSs, normal shooter games, so not too crazy with this. And then we're in the damage tab. So in the damage tab, you'll see crit chance, which is self-explanatory. Right now it's at 26, so that means every time I shoot, there's a 26% chance that my bullet will do a critical hit. And then critical multiplier is how much damage that crit does. So it's at 3x. So whenever I hit a critical hit, which is a 26% chance to happen, I will do 3 times damage. And below that, you see status. So status chance means, let's see. So every form of damage has an effect. So as you can see right here, I have impact, puncture, and slash. Each one of these has a special effect, and that effect happens based off the status chance. So it's at 10%. So that means every time I shoot an enemy, there's a 10% chance that a status will proc. So impact procs. So if I shoot him with this weapon specifically, it'll have a chance to proc impact, puncture, slash. Impact procs will stagger the enemy and also increase the health for Parazon finishers. But yeah, usually it was stagger the enemy. Puncture will increase the crit chance it will increase the crit chance on that enemy. It's weird, but the more puncture procs they have, the higher your crit chance is to that specific enemy. And then slash will do a damage over time bleed that does true damage and ignores armor. And then after that, we see the total damage, which is the total damage this weapon does. One thing to note about status chance, so there's a 10% chance a status will proc when I shoot, and on top of that, it would prioritize whatever damage type is the highest. So if these were all the same number, so if 5.8, 5.8, 5.8, they will all have a 33% chance to proc one of them whenever a status proc would happen. But as you can see, the puncture is highest, and then impact, and then slash. That means slash has least likely to proc whenever you proc a status chance, but doesn't mean it will never happen. It's just less likely than puncture damage. So moving on from that, how do we increase our damage? So if you have these things down here called mods, if you read them, for example, acceleration, which should be one of the default ones you get early on at max level, which it will take a while to max out, so I wouldn't worry about it, but try to get it to like at least level 8, or yeah, at least level 8. That should be enough to get a decent amount of damage on it. But you see acceleration, it gives plus 165% damage. So if I put this on, our 16 total went to 42 total, right? And you can see acceleration has a 14 with a symbol. When we put this in, our capacity went from 60 to 46, so we lost 14 capacity. Every time you add mods, this will go down, but you can see this symbol, known as a V symbol, I think has It's called Matterai, known as V. And you can see this symbol, which match. So if I take this and I put it there, as you can see, it's glowing green. If I put it there, we dropped 7 capacity and not 14. Usually, if the symbols match, it would half it. And if they don't match, it would double. So this went from, I think, not double, but I think 1.5 times. So it went from 11 to 14. So usually you want to have matching symbols to increase your capacity even further. So if we don't use the symbol and I just throw this here, I won't really have enough capacity to fit everything in, right? But if I threw this here, then I can add this in. But you can see we still have 3 empty ones, and I'll tell you how to increase this even further in a bit. But let's go over how to increase your modding and how to increase your damage and effects. So we went over serration. When you add it in, increase your damage, and you can see it went from 16 to 42. So is that it? Do we just stack serrations? Sadly, you could only put one serration, one type of mod at once. So if you type in serration and we want to put this one, that's gives 105. You can see it's not letting me put it in. We also have one called amalgam serration, which is a different version. If I try putting that in, you can't put that in as well, because they're, even though they have different names, they're still the same mod. So you can't put that in. But you can see we have another mod called heavy caliber and serration. These have different names. If you try to put them in, it goes in. This usually isn't the case. Certain mods, even though they have different names, are still under the same category, so they won't let you put them in. Keep that in mind if you ever want to maximize your damage. But so we have serration in, and we have our damage from 16 to 42. We have our crit chance and status chance. Usually not always, but a weapon will either have a high status chance or a high crit chance. So you'll look at which one is higher and now tell you what the weapon is good for. So if I put a status mod, which is rifle aptitude, we go up to 19%, which is decent. It's better than 10. So every time I shoot and damage an enemy, this will have a chance to proc one of the following damage types. So let's say we're procking puncture over impact, right? Because that's the higher damage type. If we want to proc impact over puncture, you can increase the impact damage. So you have this mod called rupture. So put that in, and it increased our impact from 15.3 to 17.6. But you can see it's not max level. So it's rank 0, and it's not enough to go over the puncture damage. So if we want to increase this, in the bottom right, we'll have a thing called mods. We'll click that. It'll take us to this tab. So by default, if you enter this menu from Arsenal, it'll automatically show you the install tab. So all of these mods will be the ones that are installed on said weapon. Ignore these because I have it set on another preset, but we're going to look at rupture. So click on rupture, then we'll click fusion, and then we click this plus sign, and you can see impact damage goes up, the drain goes up, and on the right side you can see how much endo you need and how much credits you need. So every time you go up, it increases. So we're at 70 to pay for it, and then we'll go up 40 and so on, right? So again, these mods are usually cheaper, but if we were to go on a look for a serration, rank 0 serration, and we try to max this out, 20,000 endo and almost 1 million credits. So in the beginning, this should be a little hard, but the more you play, this bit gets easier. That's why I recommend just stopping at rank 8. 5,000 should be more manageable, but you could build it slowly. You don't have to max it out the second you have the second you get it. Just build it slowly, make sure everything else is balanced. But rank 8 on this should be enough to give you 135. 5,000 endo is way more manageable than 20,000. But let's go back to our installed mods and look at rupture. So before we were at point, I think 4 away from overtaking our puncture damage. But let's max out our rupture and let's go back. So we had an unranked rupture, which gave us 17.6 impact, and our impact is 17.6 and our puncture is 17.8. But we want to have more impact, so proc impact over puncture. So if we max out rupture and slot it in, we'll be at 29 impact, 17.8 puncture, 9.3 slash, and our total win. So doing this increases your total damage, true, but it also changes the proc priority of status effects. So now whenever I hit an enemy, there's a 19% chance for a status effect to happen. And you can see right here the chance of each status effect happening. Impact now 9.8. If I take this off, impact's at 6.8. So if you want impact, try to increase your impact damage. And if you want less slash, try not to increase slash, and so on. And yeah. That's if it's a status weapon. This weapon's status is lower in comparison to its crit chance. So usually you'll try to increase its crit chance. So if we type in crit right here, you'll have a mod called point strike. So if point strike, if we put this in, we went from 26 to 65. Let's throw serration back in just for keep it simple. Let's go back and upgrade. So we'll go back. So if we type in point strike, or just crit in general, so we'll show all the crit mods. We'll put point strike in and we go to 65% crit chance. That's way better than 26. And keep in mind, every time a crit happens, you'll be doing 3 times your critical multiplier, 3 times your damage, because your critical multiplier is at 3, which is good. So now you're doing 42 damage, but you have a 65% chance to do 3 times that, which is really good. If we look at Vital Sense, which increases the critical damage, the critical multiplier right here, if we slot this in, that 3 goes to 6.6. So then we have a 65% chance to do 6.6 times 42.4, which is really good damage. For the star chart, this is enough, and you just need to understand that some weapons are better at crit and some weapons are better at status. When you enter late game, this sort of changes a bit, where status sometimes does more damage than crit, but we're not going to talk about that right now, just so I don't want to overwhelm you. Just keep in mind, you have mods that increase individual stats right here, and right now crit should be enough to keep you through the star chart. If we go back to what I said earlier, how 2 serrations couldn't go on the same weapon, and heavy caliber, even though it gives 165 damage, could go on the same weapon as your serration. Point strike, for example, if we try to put another point strike, it won't let us. But if we type in crit, and I have this mod called critical delay, which gives 200% crit chance and minus fire rate. In comparison, it's the same type of mod as heavy caliber. If we try to put this on, it won't let us, even though they're different names, and this one gives different stats. But because they both give crit chance, certain mods are thrown into the same category. So these two are thrown into the same category, even though they're technically different mods. I personally think they shouldn't be, but if you had these two on, your crit chance gets too high and it makes things goofy. But that's all you have to keep in mind. So crit chance, status chance, and then flat damage. So let's take off the crit chance and we have just serration on. We're at 42.4. How do we increase our damage even further? So we have a thing called multi-shot, which you can see, shouldn't be, okay, it's not up there, but we have a thing called split chamber. So if you throw split chamber in, a new tab is added called multi-shot. So normally, whenever you shoot, the gun will shoot 1 bullet at a time. So if we throw this in and we hover over it, the number of damage instances fired per shot without consuming additional ammo. So instead of shooting 1 shot, you're shooting 1.9, which means you're shooting 1 shot and you have a 90% chance to shoot a second shot. If this was higher, at 2, you'll be guaranteed 2 shots. And same thing if it was 20, you'll shoot 20 shots. But yeah, this basically doubles your damage because you have a 90% chance to shoot a second bullet. 2 bullets to do 42 damage. You're doing more damage. So these two are pretty much always on every build, just because flat damage and more bullets, it's just better. So how do we increase this even further? So you saw how we put rupture in and increase our damage, our impact damage. We can also throw in elemental mods. So we have these mods called Hellfire, Cryo Rounds, Infected Clip, and Stormbringer. The 4 elements, we could throw one of them on, and it adds a new damage type to our weapon called heat. So Hellfire gives us heat damage, and now we have heat. And if you hover over it, it tells you the status effect. I think it should do for all of them, right? Yep. Okay. So if you hover over damage types, it'll tell you the status effect. So impact will stagger enemies and increase your Paragon Mercy Kill. Puncture reduces the target's damage output and increases their crit chance that they receive. And slash does damage over time, ignores armor. And then heat sets enemies on fire, which CCs them for a bit, does damage over time, and halves their armor. So if we take this off and we put in infected clip, hover over it, same amount of damage. As you can see, they're doing the same amount of damage, just different damage types. Keep in mind that certain enemies are weak to certain damage types, but I wouldn't worry about that right now, because right now this should be enough to kill level 40 enemies. It's just when you get further into it, more happens. There's more enemies. Sorry, when you get past the start chart, enemies are stronger, and you might have to worry about what they're weak to, but right now this should be enough. But if you hover over this, it does a damage over time that bypasses shields. So yeah, so that's another way to increase your damage, is adding elemental types. So if we take this off, what happens if we add 2 elemental types? So if we put Hellfire in, we have heat. If we put infected clip, we should get toxin. We don't have toxin, we don't have heat. So when you add 2 elemental types, you combine to a new one. So heat and toxin make gas. each one combines to a different one. But right now we have gas, and it tells you gas produces a gas cloud. It deals damage to all enemies within 3 meters. So this makes a gas cloud. It does DOT over time. If I put in Stormbringer instead, corrosive, this strips armor. Viral increases damage dealt to health. Magnetic damages shields. And I believe radiation. I might be missing one, but radiation makes enemies attack each other. So it makes enemies attack each other, and the more stacks, the more damage they deal to each other. So yeah, you can keep in mind the elemental combos. I wouldn't worry about it right now. Adding one should be enough to just increase your damage. So we have Serration, Split Chamber for multi-shot, and then elemental damage. And then since this is a crit weapon, you want to put in Point Strike. So Point Strike, and then you want Vital Sense for crit damage. So generally, this should be what you want just to do damage. Increase your damage for this weapon specifically. So we have 65% chance to crit, 6.6 damage multiplier. We have multi-shot, straight damage buff, and elemental mod in there to increase our damage. This is what you want for damage. If this was more status and less crit chance, you would take off the crit mods and put more status mods in there. But since this is a crit weapon, we will keep it as we have it right now. So moving on from this, you could see we have some things on the side. You see requires primary arcane adapter. So arcane adapter is something you wouldn't have access to until you get Steel Path. Steel Path is what happens after you complete your star chart. So we went over the star chart. When you complete that, you have access to arcanes, but I wouldn't worry about that now because you don't need them to do the star chart. Once you complete the star chart, you get access to it, and then it helps you further on. So right now we can ignore it. Below that, we have Exiles adapter. So it has a special symbol, and it's apart from our other mods. So if we go down here where all our other mods are, we can see the same symbol here called Exiles. Click that, you'll see all these other mods. Now, these mods won't really affect your weapon that much, but if you hover over some of these mods, you can see Vile Precision decreases recoil but decreases fire rate, Stability decreases recoil, Hush makes your weapon silence, Tactical Reload makes you reload when your weapon's holstered, and so on. These are all this quality of life stuff. You don't really need them, but they're nice to have if you have enough extra space to throw it on. But moving past that, we can see we still have 3 empty slots, but we only have 6 capacity left. So how do we increase? Let's say we want to put a Hellfire in here to make radiation damage. How do we make space for a Hellfire? Let's go back to the bottom where you see action. So if we click on action, where we added the Orcan Catalyst to increase our capacity, you'll see a thing that says Polarize, right? So remember how we mentioned earlier that when the symbols match Point Strike, the cost is halved. So if we don't put it on that symbol, we have 2 capacity left, but because we put Point Strike in there, we now have 6 capacity left. So if we click on action, click on Polarize, you'll see this screen. Now this screen, it says Polarize and mod slot. So if we click on, for example, this one, this empty slot right here, you'll see the V symbol that we mentioned earlier. So if we keep clicking, D-empty, V-D-empty. So doing this, you can now add symbols. So we can see in the top right, we have Serration. We could add a V here, but if we try to add, let's say, a dash here, you can see this V disappears. So you can only do this one at a time. So we're not going to add it right now, but for example, for demonstration, we're going to show you just the menu. So I can only do one at a time. I can't put 2, and if I change it, it won't let me, right? And let's say we want to change the existing one. So let's say the weapon came with a dash, which is right here. And let's say it came with a V, I'm sorry, and we wanted a dash. So if we click on this, we can change this to a dash. Notice how when I keep clicking, it doesn't go to a V, but there's this empty one. So that means if you want to remove this completely, you can. Usually you wouldn't want to, but you can if you so choose. And let's cancel this and go back here. So if you want to do that, it would add the symbol, one of these. So you can add a V here to match it, increase your capacity further. But in doing so, your weapon will go from rank 30 back to rank 0, right? So when we do that, it'll go back to rank 0, and you'll have to level it up. You'll have to level it up back to 30 before you can do the polarization again. One thing to keep in mind, when you level the weapon again for the 2nd time or 3rd time or 5th time, you don't get experience for your mastery rank. So the first time you level up a weapon, you get the mastery for it, but every time past that, you don't get the magic. Okay, so you can't keep getting your favorite weapon and keep polarizing, resetting the level, and just farm free levels off your favorite weapon, right? So if we go back here, you'll see a resource. It says 7 out of 1 for me and a little icon. This is called Forma. So every time you polarize, you'll use a Forma. You'll use a Forma, it'll reset the level, you'll add a symbol, and then you level back up, reset the level, add a symbol, level back up, and so on. And every time you do that, you'll slowly and surely half these, and allowing you to fill in these slots. So if we half this, we'll add 6 more slots. We half this, we should add another 6. We half this, we should add another 5 slots. Half this, add another 4 slots, and so on. We add half these 2 right here, and we should be able to fill up the rest of our mod slots. So doing so is one way to keep increasing your weapon level. So let me show you one of my personal weapons that has a full build on it. So right here we have the Gremrper, which you're able to get for free on Warframe Anniversary. But we're not going to talk about Gremrper. We're going to talk about the symbol right here at the top. You see you have a 4 with this line with the star. That means I have 4 formas on it and it's mastered. I have 4 formas. You can see 3 symbols. 3 symbols, but 4 forma, which means I changed an existing symbol on it to make it 4. And you can keep forming a weapon. Even though we have 8 slots, you can form it 8 times, 1 time, 10 times, 80 times, as much as you want to keep changing the build. Keep in mind, if I forma on config A, config B also gets the forma. So you can't have different formas, different configs. If you want different builds that change the forma, you either have to reforma and rebuild it, or get a different weapon and build that completely different, up to you. Now that I explained modding a little bit, let's go to the testing area and test out the one version we modded and the version with no mods and see how much of a difference it made and if it helps us at all with our journey throughout the start chart. Okay, so we're in the test area with our Baza. So let's go look at the configs, see what mods we have on right now. So we're in config A with no mods, B has no mods, and C with the mods we left earlier. So acceleration, crit chance, crit damage, multi-shot, and electric damage. So we'll stay on config A with no mods just to demonstrate the power of the weapon with no mods. We'll exit out. So we're in the test area. We have level 45 corrupted heavy gunners, corrupted lancers, corrupted crewmen, and corrupted butchers. Corrupted enemies are the enemies you'll find at the void. I'm using Mott as my demonstration. So level 45 enemies you'll find at Mott. So we'll shoot the level 45 heavy gunners to headshots. As you can see, they're pretty tanky. Let's go shoot the lancers. Not as tanky. This took like 2 clips. That was 1. And you can see I'm critting. Alright, he's died. And let's go look at the crewman. Same thing, taking a little more damage than the lancers. And then finally the butchers. So at rank 0, it could do the job. It takes a lot of work, and the heavy gunners are pretty much like immune to you. 1 clip I do like maybe 3%. So let's go back here. Let's switch our presets to config C, which we upgraded. Let's go here. Let's reset them back to full health, and let's go back here. So let's hit the heavy gunner. I don't know about you guys, but to me, I see a night and day difference. So hit the heavy gunner. You can see the status effect happening with the electric. So if I hit him, he gets CC'd and then linked to that guy. You see how these guys are getting 1 shot? So not end game ready. So if any veterans are watching this, this is not end game ready, but it's way more than enough for your start chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so 45 enemies. This is the Baza. More than enough. More than enough to deal with these enemies. But let's say we don't like our electric damage. So we go back in here, we'll upgrade. We'll take out Stormbringer. Let's put Hellfire. So now we're doing heat damage. Let's reset these enemies. We're doing heat damage. So let's shoot this guy. 1, 2, 3. So you see our damage is doing pretty much the same. This will be the case no matter what elements you put on. Your damage shouldn't change that much because they're weak enough where their damage vulnerabilities won't really matter. When you get to the fact that when you get to the point where they're level 150, 200, 3000, they get super tanky. So you want damage types that are are strong against certain enemies. So but right now you can see just crit chance and base damage is enough to deal with these enemies. Okay, so we went over the star chart. We went over how to tackle your star chart, how to progress through your star chart, and hopefully complete it. We went over how to mod your weapon of choice to help you complete the star chart, going from rank 0 unmodded to rank 30 modded to make your journey through the star chart simpler and easier. If you're still having issues with your star chart, let me know in the comments or come through the stream. Let me know how I can help you. Let me know the issues. I'll try my best to give you information.